Welcome back to the Football Terrace. Hit the like button. Make sure you are subscribing. And sorry, I'm just got a weird text come through. I thought it was important, but it's not. It's marketing. It said your dog. I thought something happened to my dog for a second. I panicked. I thought my favorite child was in trouble. Welcome back to Six Sided. Like, share, and get yourselves subscribing. Get it all done now. Loads to go through in the next 90 minutes after a humbling. The frauds of Manchester City were exposed this weekend. Nottingham Forest picked up a dramatic, amazing, a brilliant 0-0 win against Arsenal in the Premier League. Villa, good evening, bottled it as well. Tottenham in the mud. Liverpool, drawing to Burnley at home. That would never happen to my team. And Wolves getting a point against, that did happen to my team, but Wolves getting a point against Newcastle. We beat them away, though. We beat them away 4-1. So, yeah, I'm the only one who won here at the weekend. Well, no, Wolfie won. I
won as well, mate. I won
also. 0-0 draw. You won performance of the week. Welcome, everybody. How are we all?
Very well, thank you.
Nick, I'm still recovering from illness, but yeah, we good though.
I literally just clocked. You said favorite child, and you were talking about Rocky.
I assumed he was gonna. I assumed he said meant that anyway. So it's, you know.
Yeah, my kids know. If you ask if you ever meet my children, who's your dad's favorite child, they'll say the dog. Yes, yeah, definitely.
At least they know.
But my kids call me Terry. So it's
that makes sense.
Oh, okay, then fair enough.
We banter a lot in my house. Like we banter a lot. It's good fun here. No sticks in the mud. Thank you, Luke, for encouraging everybody to hit the like button. But I want to start off with maybe the biggest shock of the weekend. And it wasn't Wolverhampton Wanderers stopping the Toon Army. It wasn't Edwards and Burnley getting a point at Liverpool. It wasn't a brilliant 0-0. Wasn't a brilliant 0-0 for Forest, although Arsenal have gone 7 points clear. It was Manchester United, not just beating, okay, but producing this type of, wins the parade, absolutely embarrassing Manchester City to a point, and I will add this right at the start, where Pep gave up in the 80th minute and took Haaland off. I'm not going to lie to you, after the 13 years we've had, after the last couple of years we had, it was a lovely Saturday afternoon. It was a wonderful medley of delightable joy. And thank you, Michael Carrick, for proving that City are frauds. But aside from that, what do we all make of the performance? What do we all make of the performance from Man United? I'm just so looking forward to the praise today on the show. Go on, let's go.
I think you should be proud. I think Man United fans should be proud of what their team produced, and I don't like saying it. Like from minute 1 to minute 95, Man United dominated and spanked Manchester City like it was their little bitch. Like it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I have not seen a Man United team dominate Man City in a very, very long time. I think every player from the goalkeeper, the striker, played their part. They ran for the badge, played for the fans, showed some fight, which was lacking in this team for quite a long time. And they got a very well-deserved 2-0 win. Although it should have been around about 4 or 5, given the fact they had so many decent chances. But fair play to Man United. Fair play to Michael Carrick as well. I did say this, Terry, and I'm going to do the I told you, what is that? I told you so. I am right kind of thing. I said Michael Carrick would be what Man United needed in terms of just steadying the ship for the time being. That's what they need. The club is in a mess. The club is all over the place. They just need someone with a safe pair of hands who knows the club just to steady the ship for the time being until they can get their act together. And I feel like Michael Carrick is the best person for that. Whether that's going to be him on a longer term basis, that I'm not too sure about. But for the time being, just bring some life back to the club. And I think Michael Carrick is doing it at the moment, as you can see with Terry right now.
Look, I said it on Straight Facts this morning on Carrick. I said it before Straight Facts this morning. I said it last week. There is a world where I'd want him to stay on. And what I stated was it had to be a lot of wins in the 17 games he's going to manage, and a lot of top performances where we actually are the better team. And Saturday wasn't a point where I go, actually, we've got to do it right away. That would be crazy. But it was a case in point for if we got 10, 11 games like that out the 17, he has to be in the conversation simply because there's always a risk. Even the guy with a better CV, with a better track record, who's considered elite, might come in and not do as well as that because we've hired all types of managers before. But for me, I was proud. I absolutely stand on that. Like, all banter aside from City, I was proud of the team. Loved how we played. Even watching, maybe it's because it's Carrick and he's a legend. The way he celebrated the goals, I don't know. It wasn't like a yes, I'm the manager, my system works. It was almost like fucking hell, it's working. And I enjoyed that because I know he's from Newcastle, but spent a lot of his childhood in the East End of London, and he loves Manchester United. So, you know, me and Carras have got a little bit of a connection there, as it were. But
the real United fan base in London, I hear it.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. It's we can't help that we're global, man. We were global.
Are we really doing this much over one win, though? You played well. Carrick schooled him. Are we really doing the old Rio Ferdinand slap the contract on the table stuff now?
No.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you, Wolfie. I mean, as much as I agree with what Ram was saying about the game, I'm not going nowhere near as far as what you're saying in terms of the sort of rest of the season outlook. Listen, that was a very good game from Man United. Very good game. And they I think every word that everyone's been using in terms of schooled, masterclass, they all apply to this game. City were abject. I don't even think they looked like scoring at all in the game, and that was down more to Man United than to Man City. So yeah, all the superlatives for Man United's performance. But I'm not going as far as saying, you know, this is what they need. Carrick's the guy. Let's get him signed up. Like,
for the time being, years. Do
you know what? No. I do agree with the boys. This is what I'm celebrating the game. The only reason I mentioned the long-term element is because I spoke before the game. Somebody said to me on the United stand, would you give Carrick the job? And all I stated was there has to be a debate, but it can't just be one or two good games, or even if it was loads of wins, it would have to be loads of wins with brilliant performances. And I'm just using it as a case in point. It would be crazy. And even if he does it, we should get to the end of the season, talk to other candidates and make an informed decision. Not just say wins his first 5 games and we play as well as we did at the weekend. Don't make a knee-jerk reaction and go, there you go, there's a 3-year deal worth £25 million, because it might just be a bounce, and we have to be very mindful of that. That all being said, I enjoyed the day. So yeah, I agree with the boys. I'm not getting carried away, because equally if we lose and get slapped up by Arsenal this weekend 4-0. I'm enjoying the moment.
That's exactly what I said. At this moment in time, it's the best appointment because he knows the club and he can steady the ship until you guys can figure it out. Until you can figure it out, and whether he can be the guy that can take you forward, that's a different question. We have to wait and see about that. Because again, like even with Ruben Amorim, how much criticism you can get, you can still argue in the big games. Man United always turn up. It's the smaller games where it's like you have to see what happens with it. But for the time being, until the end of the season, he is probably the best appointment you can have just to steady the ship and bring some life back to the club.
Maybe to the end of the season. I wouldn't disagree with that. Nobbins, how did you find it? Because obviously you're looking at it from a different point of view. City, this is not even banter. I don't remember the last time you were nullified to not a single chance in a game, and it didn't look like you were going to score, to a point where your manager essentially just said, going to save Haaland for another day and take him off. That rarely happens to City. But how did you view it from your perspective?
I think Carrick deserves a lot of credit. I don't think the way he did tactically was especially interesting or complex, but it didn't have to be. I think that was the key thing. Amorim has arguably been overcomplicating things for however long, and Carrick just profiled the best players in the best possible way, like getting Bruno into the best positions, for example. He identified what the weaknesses were in City's build-up structure. For the past few weeks, we've been playing a 3-1 build, which means that Rodri's left isolated, essentially. So it means that if you're able to get enough bodies in and around Rodri, then you deny access to the attack. And that's exactly what United did. The other thing that they did was they forced us to build up down our left side through Mbumo's curving runs. that meant that we had to go through Elaine, who is a young, inexperienced, right-footed defender playing on the left, and also Ake, who is a centre-back and not an especially secure one either. And it also denied access to players like Foden and Rico on that right side. And that was all Carrick's doing. That was clearly orchestrated and planned. So massive credit is deserved there. And I think also I've never seen Rodri have such a poor game out of possession as well. Like the amount of times where Bruno would drop deep and Rodri just didn't know where to stand. He didn't know where to pick him up. And then that forces like a City fullback to jump out. That forces the whole back line to go across. And then Bruno can just hit a switch. And how many times did we see that where an attack might start on United's left, and then within like 2 passes, it's over on the right-hand side, and they're just like, and they're all away. And it's like a 3-on-3 or a 4-on-4 situation. So yeah, United deserve massive credit for that. They actually played, certainly like the earlier phases of the game, they were sometimes committing 7 bodies to their build-up, whereas City only had 4. So I wanted City to basically set up how Carrick set up United. And this isn't just like a complaint of mine from the derby. It's something that's been an issue for me for the past few weeks, to be honest with you. So hopefully Pep goes back to that. But yeah, you've got to give, and look, there were some bad individual performances from a lot of City players. Again, Rodri had one of the worst games I've ever seen him have, and like Hasanov, Elaine, early on the build-up, they looked like they were struggling. But you've got to give Carrick and United credit for forcing those errors to a degree as well. So I don't want it to be framed as just City were bad, therefore United can't be applauded. I think that United forced City into a lot of those bad errors, and that wasn't by chance. That was because Carrick set them up well, in my opinion.
You were really bad down the left-hand side. Ake was horrific. Doku was terrible. He was playing too wide for me. And just the build-up was slow. Foden was a no-show. Haaland got bullied by, what's his face?
Martinez?
Sandro.
He's half his size. That's unacceptable. And your players just didn't care. And on the Carrick side, I mean, he came into a dream thing. I actually rate Carrick. I'd rather Ollie had gone to United. But it was easy for Carrick. Everyone knows that you don't have to be a tactical genius to understand that Bruno shouldn't be playing in an 8. You need to play him in a 10 and give him some freedom around it. Mainu has the legs for about 60 minutes to get into that midfield and cause it and go to a back 4 shape. He had a very easy scenario to come into to fix Manchester United. And it's something all rival fans have been saying. It's an easy fix at United. The formation is wrong. Amorim's too pig-headed to do it. And the flaws got shown. And it was an easy fix. Now, will they carry on and do it? I think a debate needs to be had about the attitude of these players. How is it that they turned up against Man City? Where have they been for the last 18 months? Well, even longer. Some would argue over the last 10 years. But it almost feels like when they want to turn up, they'll turn up. And when they can't be bothered, they won't. And it shows in their performances. Man, you deserved it. You were lucky to get away with a 2-0 loss. And you're lucky that I saved your ass the next day.
I think it's probably done anyway, in fairness. But I agree. United denied access to our right sides. It's certainly in that first half especially. They forced it down the left, and I agree with you that in this 3-1 shape that City have, that does lend itself to Doku naturally becomes more of a touchline wide player, and we know he can do that. But City's best games this season have been when he hasn't been in those positions. It's been when he's allowed to play more centrally. But you can't do that if you have Ake on the pitch, because he's not going to maraud up and provide an overlap.
Why didn't he just try switching Semenyo with him? Just after, you could see after 20 minutes it wasn't working. Maybe just spice it up, because Delot's been probably one of United's worst players this season, and he just looked like
he has. But what we did different in the game, and again, these are they're little differences, they're basic differences, but important. Too often our fullbacks don't push out early enough. And what we did in the game, our fullbacks pushed out to both the wingers, but then Ahmad on one side and Bruno did it regularly on the other, is they were in a position where they couldn't cut inside. They cut out the passing lanes to the central players like Foden, Jacquet, etc. So it was very, very hard unless they were going to dribble past 2 or 3 players. And only once did Ahmad not get back, or it may have actually have been Delo that was caught out of position. Ahmad was in the right back role, but he came inside and Doku went to shoot, and Mainu was there to make a block. That's what we did and made hard. And I think the one thing where I'm not about not giving Carrick credit is because it's the first game. It's like when our lineup came out, I saw a lot of Man United fans crying. And I was like, well, none of us can cry. We have no idea how we're going to play under Carrick. So therefore, we don't know if the formation is right or not. I mean, it was Dorgu that was getting back down the left-hand side. So they could have switched him. It might have made a difference. But I think as good as dribblers are, if you've got 2 players next to you and there's no room on the inside, it's very hard for players like Doku to do much, because as skillful as he is, same as Semenyo, they're not like Eden Hazard or Messi. Their dribbling is knock it past a player and sprint. But if there's no room to sprint into, I think it makes, in defense of City, I think it makes it a bit harder to do.
Your banks were really tight. It's been like, it was really organized in there. And to get that organization in that short space of time that Carrick had was impressive. But you should have been down to 10 men. Let's be real. That was a straight red.
Yeah, listen, the more I see it, obviously I wound some City fans up at half time and they were like, what do you think of the tackle? I was like, yeah, I agree. Terrible. Definitely a yellow. And then I was like, no, I actually did delete the tweets because I was like, I don't want people, when you read a tweet back, you're not going to, I wasn't reading my own sarcasm. And I was like, no, it absolutely could have been a red. What I will say in defense of it is we've seen for years these glancing tackles not be reds. And I'll give you a massive standout example. Van Dijk versus Everton 3 seasons ago against Onana when he was in midfield. Goes in, studs like this, catches the shin first, but slides down the shin and the pressure goes on the ankle. Same thing was said then. It was a glancing blow. Man United versus Villa 3 years ago with Sabitzer did the same thing on the knee of who's the centre back for Villa with the big puffy hair? Fries. I think he's big like
Phase. What for
Phase?
Leicester?
Yeah, he did it to Phase. Is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be a red. I think they should change the law, but there has been a long-standing precedent for that. And I know that a lot of people have gone, well, Xavi Simons was like that. No, Xavi Simons was different. He clearly meant to rake him. There's a difference in the two things. But yeah, that was the only part of the game where we did get lucky, I think, because on another day he could have got a red card and it would have changed the game. It would have changed the game altogether. But they've got to look at that because the glancing thing is ridiculous.
For me, also look at the height of it. Look, I think even at 10 men, the way City was set up, you would have won that. But it was a red. First contact was on the knee, stud showing, height in, then rakes down it. Whether or not you're saying there's enough pressure or not, that's not in this day and age. It's a red.
Yeah, you can't control what the referee's going to do. But what you can do is control where you position your players on the pitch. That's why I don't really care about the red card debate or conversation, because at halftime Pep had an opportunity to switch things up and he made the team worse. That's what I'm annoyed about. I don't care about the referee making it. I don't even know if it is a mistake. I don't really care. Pep made an error at halftime. He didn't change the structure. He just made it worse. That's what I'm frustrated about. Just like going back to the Dallo thing, I think Wolfie or Terry, one of you correctly said that he and Ahmad were doubling up on Doku basically all the time. And that meant that for City's perspective, when we got into dangerous areas, Doku, okay, he's doing his job because he's taken 2 players out of the equation. That means there's got to be a spare man somewhere else. The problem was that the spare man every time was Ake. So what's he going to do? Literally nothing. All he can do is cross it, and then Maguire or Martinez just heads it away. Now, if that's a Night Nori or if it's a Nico O'Reilly, then it's a different conversation to be had. And maybe Ahmad can't leave Ake as much and he can't support Doku as much, so he can't create a 2v1. So there's just lots I didn't like about the setup from City.
Yeah, and you were playing with 10 men as well, to be fair to you, because Foden was appalling in that game.
I think the Foden one's interesting. So in the first instance, he was denied access from that right side for the reasons I've outlined before. But this shape that we're using also doesn't really benefit him either. And again, we saw it in the second half. Like Shirky came on for Foden and City actually got worse. I don't get why we've moved away from what was working before, where we had a 2-3 and you had Foden in a deeper area of the pitch. That is beneficial to Foden. It's beneficial to Haaland as well, because now all the space isn't congested around him like it was. It's also beneficial to Doku for the reasons we've outlined, because you get him into a central area of the pitch as well. It's also beneficial to players like Nunes and Nico O'Reilly because they can be natural width holders. And it's beneficial to the build-up because you have 5 players instead of 4. And it's just beneficial from a rest defense perspective as well, like i.e. how are you set up when you lose the ball? Because you've got more bodies back. I think since the Sunderland game at home, I want to say that's when we've properly moved away from the 3-1 to a 2-3. And as far as I can tell, it's not really benefiting any player, to be honest. I don't know why we've moved away from it. I don't really get it personally.
I hear you on that. I've got the first fact or fiction question of the night. I'm going to throw it first to Nobbins, and then everyone else can have their say on it. So I want to remind the audience that these fact or fiction questions or statements are not mine. I'll take them from tweets and posts that people make and comments people make. And it's a fact or fiction. Pep Guardiola has been exposed 2 seasons without the best players, just under 600 million spent, and no really improvements to show for it.
Gosh, there's a lot to unpack there. The financial point, I think, is valid, but all I would say is that if you look at City's, because when's that figure from? Is that from 2023? That amount spent?
That's I think officially now it's about 550, but that's from last Jan, the summer, and this January. So it's the calendar year basically.
Yeah. So my retorts to that, I guess, would be that if you look at the City sides that like won the Champions League, like won the treble, next season I think only 2 of those starters will be in the squad, maybe 3. If you look at the squad in its entirety, I think 18 out of the 23 from the squads will have gone. So you have to spend a lot of money to rebuild a squad. Like, hopefully we all understand that if you are an ambitious club, you have to spend money in order to rebuild a squad. That's not a controversial thing to say.
Just spend it legally.
Pardon?
Just spend it legally. Yeah, we don't want any more charges.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Well, it also
we're still waiting, bro. We're still waiting.
Yeah,
this is coming from a man whose owner puts knives to the back of players to sign new deals.
When you found guilty of transfers,
this man's got Tony Soprano running his club.
Yeah, you can't be. That's such rules.
No charges have ever stuck. Is all just slander.
I thought, didn't you get? Am I being stupid? Didn't you get proven to get done?
Yeah,
that was a
speeding ticket. I think that's
the speeding ticket.
Am I being stupid? Did you not get?
You don't get criminal record for
but did you not get a points deduction? Am I being stupid?
They did.
That's like 3 points.
Right, you did. Yeah. What's going on here?
You don't have a criminal record.
That's hypocritical.
This is crazy. Yeah. Let's wait for us to have been found to have breached the rules first of all. Unlike your fraudulent club, that's outrageous behaviour. So that's spending the money thing. I can't remember what I was going to say next. Sorry, what was the other statement, please, Terry? What's the rest of the statement?
It just said that he's been exposed that when he doesn't have the best of players, there's no real City are not good enough. There's been no improvement in the last 2 years, even though like vat of players have been bought. I suppose that the post for me when I've read it is essentially saying that Pep's a very good manager, but he's been exposed that without the very best players in that league, he can't win it.
I think that I don't know who is in charge of the squad building at City. I'm sure Pep has a part in that. I don't think the squad building's been good enough for the past 2 years. I think that lots of the issues that we've seen this season have been issues from last season as well. It's definitely gotten better, but if we're going to play like we have done this season, then you have to bring in more of a combative midfielder, someone like an Elliot Anderson or a Bruno Guimaraes or a Declan Rice or a Bellingham. And we went for Reinders instead, who is not that ilk of midfielder. So if we are going to play like this, I don't think that is a cohesive signing. So whoever is in charge of the squad building as things stand, I would say is question marks need to be asked. I'm not willing to say that Pep's a fraud or has been exposed or anything. I mean, he was exposed on Saturday, but I think it would be a bit foolish to suggest that he's absolutely done as a manager. He's, whether rightly or wrongly, he's adapting to the new tactical meta from this season. It's going away from his more fundamental principles. That's the way football seems to be going. So I'm willing to wait until the end of this season and indeed next season also before calling him a fraud personally.
What are you saying, Kane, on this in terms of Pep Guardiola? Because do you look at it as fraudulent behaviour? He's meant to be the greatest manager of all time, but can't keep up with Arsenal this season, even after all the money being spent? Or do you think that's an overly disrespectful statement to a Pep Guardiola?
I tend to agree with the latter. I think that's quite disrespectful. I feel like we are disregarding what the City squad is at the moment. I agree with Nobbins. 2 years ago, this is a nonsense statement. And I think what we're seeing is this squad's very much different, mainly because I think we're seeing a defense that are starting to age out. You look at not just age out, but you're also looking at injuries as well. Like Diaz, I think I don't know how often he's been playing, but even then he looks like since injuries, he's lost a yard of pace. You've got Ake who's on the way out. You've lost John Stones is a literal walking sick note. They've lost their right back. They don't really have a recognized right back. I'm not willing to call Rico Lewis anything but a player at this point in time. And I think the squad, this is kind of where Pep is at the moment. He's sort of halfway between transitioning. Yeah, they spent a lot of money, but again, I think with Pep's style, it requires a high level of technical ability from all of his players, not just one or two. And I think they've kind of gone away from that a little bit. We're starting to see like more dribblers in the team, whereas Man City teams from the near past that I've like from their sort of heyday, I always thought were like brilliant passes of the ball. Where you'd have like your Bernardo Silvas, your Agueros, your David Silvas, even Rodri now, who's combative but is also just so good on the ball. Kevin De Bruyne as well, Mahrez, all of these top level technicians. Whereas now they've kind of gone down the sort of Doku's who are they can beat a man. And their final ball's okay. It can be great at times, but not great at others. And I think we're sort of in this weird twilight zone with Pep, where he's sort of changing his philosophy. The squad building, I agree as well, hasn't really been to a par of where it used to be, and the defense is aging out / injured all the time. And even then, we're still talking about a Man City team who are currently second in the league and are still, albeit by a thread at this point. Oh, well, I don't want to say by a thread. They've still got a realistic chance of winning, but with every passing week, it's getting less and less realistic. And apparently, this means you're washed, even though you're second and still in a title race, and still potentially going to be in the final of the League Cup. You could still make the FA Cup final, and you're still in the Champions League. So if this is washed, well, fuck me, Pep's done a fucking good job so far. So I'm not willing to say he's exposed or anything. I think people just need to calm down a little bit.
I keep getting a lot of people commenting saying, Terry, what do you think? Terry, what's your view? Look, I'm never going to call Pep a fraud. I think calling Pep a fraud is disrespectful. What he's achieved prior, I'm never going to do anything to take it away because I think that is disrespectful. What I will say is that when there's been these conversations about who the greatest managers of all time are, I feel that Pep's kind of gone into this mold recently. I heard a journalist, I think it was John Cross, say this weekend, he's the best Premier League manager ever, bar none, point blank, no debate. I think that's just as disrespectful to Sir Alex Ferguson as saying Pep's washed. And the reason I say that is because what Pep is witnessing right now is the first time he's ever tried to rebuild a team after a great team has ended. Not just a team that's won the title or is good and he's added better players to it, because the definition of what a rebuild is become really interesting. But he had a great team. That team he built that did the four-peat, that did the treble, I have personally referred to it and stand by this as one of the greatest European sides of all time. Rebuilding that and having the energy to do it is hard. Very few managers have ever done that at the same club. It's an achievement that when Pep joined England and spoke about Fergie, he said, that's the one thing I don't understand how he did it. I don't know how he kept the energy and the motivation in that same place to do it again. It's phenomenal. And Pep praising him and saying that, meant something because Pep only at that point only stayed at places for 3 to 4 years. What's also going on right now is football is going through another change. If we all remember 10, 15 years ago, everybody wanted an Ozil and a number 10 because they were the most important players on the pitch. 5, 6 years ago, everyone wanted attacking fullbacks that marauded and created, became your playmakers. Football goes through these transitions. Right now, good technical ability coupled with lots of power and pace is providing so many dividends in the Premier League. So many teams are dangerous because of it. And I don't think Pep thus far has adapted to that very well. I know he's third in the league, second in the league, and I know he's still one of the best teams, but you should be with what they're spending. I don't think Pep has quite settled in that yet, which is, for me, I wouldn't call it exposure. I wouldn't call it fraudulence. What I would say is it opens up the door to these debates, because what I saw Sir Alex Ferguson do was adapt through the 70s. I didn't see the 70s, I weren't born, but he adapted through the 70s into the 80s, into the 90s, into the noughties, into the 20 teens, where football changed, society changed, sports science changed. Ferguson went through the owners like Roman Abramovich, owners like the Sheikh coming in and spending ungodly amounts of money that nobody else could compete with until PSR came in, and still found a way to win. So for me, it's not about him being exposed to the fraud, because I don't need to slag Pep off to make arguments about who is and isn't the greatest. I think all this demonstrates it's a smudge to a degree when it comes to the elite of the elite, the best of the best debates. It doesn't undo any of the greatness of Pep Guardiola. If he walks away at the end of the season he's trying to rebuild a team, if he walks away at the end of the season and doesn't do it, that will always, well, I'm not going to say it's going to haunt him, because I don't think he'll care per se, but it's one of those things that when it comes to these conversations, not rebuilding this team, not getting it back to winning more league titles, I do think that's an issue when you're separating the very greatest managers of all time. But overall, I'd never call him a fraud. I think calling him a fraud is disrespectful. I don't think spending a lot of money and calling him a checkbook manager should be a slight. Spending money comes with pressure. Huge pressure. You have to deliver. I think it's harder sometimes to spend 500, 600 million in a year than it is not to, because you get no sympathy. And that's a different type of pressure that you only really understand. You know, they say life like more money, more problems. There's kind of an element there. So I wouldn't call him a fraud, but I certainly think it shows that maybe he's struggling to adapt to the latest adaptation of football that works in Europe.
And to be fair, he did try to, because when was it? I think it was straight after the treble, was it? So I think Pep did, I don't know if predict or foresee is the right word. I think it was after the treble year. Was that when we tried to get Bellingham, maybe? Or was it the year after? I can't remember. But there was a period where we were trying to get Bellingham, we didn't get him. Then we tried to get Rice, and then we didn't get him. And then we tried to get someone else, we didn't get him. And we settled on Nunes. I can't remember what year that was, though.
That was the summer of 23. That was the summer of 23.
Right, yeah, okay, yes. So just after City won the treble, yeah. So Pep, in fairness to him, he did try to bring in this mold of midfielder, which unfortunately we are still currently missing, which is amazing. And we panicked and we ended up getting Nunes, who has failed as a City midfielder, unfortunately, and is now being played as a very good right back, of course, but he's not been used for that purpose. We still haven't brought that player in. Now it looks like it's going to be Anderson in the summer. And I think that finally we will have got our man, hopefully, because he is that ilk of player. Is he as good as Rice? Is he as good as Bellingham? Obviously not. But it's a similar vibe of player that the City are trying to get. So I think that there is definitely an attempt to adapt. And I guess we'll just have to see whether when that player comes in, will City look better as a consequence, I guess.
I agree. And as I say, I know we live in a really horrible world at the minute where everyone's content is off. Not everyone's. A lot of content is about just slagging people off. I'm not slagging him off. I am nitpicking because we're talking about the best of the best. I remember what was being said in the summer of 1998, and that was Wenger's overtook Fergie. The football, they can't compete with it. Fergie's not going to be able to coach that. He's done out here. And people don't remember this because they're too young or they want to ignore it. There was talk in the late 90s of Fergie being washed. There was talk in the mid-noughties of him being too old and finished and football's moved on. Jose's come along with this powerhouse football where they start like a freight train. No more slow starts the season. Fergie's too old to adapt. The money Chelsea have got, the Wolves for Man United's ability to spend, and it did for 3 years. People don't remember this, that the average spend of the big teams back then was 20 to 35 million a summer. Chelsea came in doing 150, 200 a year. United couldn't spend like that, and we didn't spend like that for many, many a year, but he found the way, and that is what I'm looking at Pep. If I'm honest with you, if Pep's able to adapt and go, right, I found another way of doing it now that football's changed, that's when I look at it and go, you go from being one of the greatest, that's when I put you nearer that top marker, because that's, I suppose, the bit that I've got to be in my bonnet about. I see none of that from Fergie's history discussed on TalkSport, Sky Sports, TNT Sports. And the guys that fuck me off the most are his ex-players that sit on these podcasts when we get these mouthy, trappy kids who weren't even alive or were still sucking their mum's tit back then, attack what he did, and you get the likes of Scholesy and Butty and everybody sit there and say fuck all about their boss. And I'm sitting there going, hang on, I lived this shit. I get why most of the pundits on TV whose lives Fergie ruined are just going to let it be said, but it's too many lies out there. What I won't do is stoop to the same level and lie about things Pep has or hasn't done. I'm only talking about what I want to see him do. And he's under a real bit of stress here because a lot of money's gone into it. He has to get it right because every manager, no matter what you've won, if you spend money, has to have pressure to deliver, like every top manager before him. And he's not going to get off, in my world, with that. But what I won't do is like a lot of people, he's been found out, everything before it was fraudulent. No, he created some of the greatest footballing teams of all time. I'll never take that away from him. Amazing manager. He's just going through, and also doing it in one place is different from, I always found it's different from moving countries. Because in the same place, what I reckon it's going to come out if he does quit this year, he's just going, I'm so tired, I couldn't keep going. Klopp the same, I couldn't keep going. That for me is what's hard about this. But sorry, you were going to say something, Ram. Apologies.
I was going to say, when you're talking about the absolute top level, and we're going down to we're comparing with the likes of Fergie's, we're like Fergie, and I get the whole point of when you spend money, you get the pressure, but with all these top managers, where I compare them to the likes of Fergie and Jose Mourinho, those guys did it not only when they had money, but also without the money. And that's the one thing I question with Pep Guardiola, because he was at Barcelona, where people say, oh, they're in turmoil, but he had the freak of nature that was known as Lionel Messi in the team. Then he went to Bayern Munich, who was a treble-winning team. And I think, in my personal opinion, they regressed under him until they got in Hansi Flick. And then at Manchester City, where he was able to spend the money that he's got. And if you compare it to what Fergie did with Aberdeen, then he went to Man United, rebuilt what Man United did, and then got them to where they are and where they were back in the day. And what Jose did with Porto. Like those kind of achievements, when you're comparing it to what Pep did, there is an argument to say, like, Pep, are you able to do what these guys did? Because they can.
Wait. How can you say? Sorry, what time was Fergie not spending money?
Yeah, I was about to challenge that. Yeah,
well, I can tell you. I mean,
so when he first joined Man United,
Ram. Let me just. I'll give the facts. You can go check it on transfermarket.co.uk. In the first 15 years, he was at the club from 1986 until 2001, and I use that as a point because that was Fergie's era where he won as many Prems from his first Prem win until 2001. He won as many as Pep has won in this period, did a three-peat, a treble, and the first club ever to do the double-double. Man United were only the 10th highest spenders in the league at that point. 9 other clubs had outspent Manchester United in that 15-year period. In the Premier League era alone in that first period, Sir Alex Ferguson and Man United was still only the 10th highest spenders. From 2001 until he retired, we were the 4th highest spenders, and we finished for Fergie's entire era. He was the 4th highest spender in the league. To put it into context, Tottenham only spent £30 million less than him in that 27-year period. So no one is going to deny that Fergie didn't spend money, but this idea that he was spending it hand over fist and more than Liverpool's, Chelsea's, everybody else, no. Aberdeen,
you put that together. The money towards the end of that group you put is different towards the money at the start of that group of that period you put.
Why?
What do you mean why? Because then you were bringing in, where Chelsea was starting to spend money or Blackburn was starting to spend money.
Mm-hmm.
The £1 million at the start of Fergie's era is different to the £1 million in the end of that period you've put. You can't group that big. How many 14 years you put in there? You can't group that together.
Why?
Because the valuation of the money towards the end of it, in the Premier League.
But that's the same for everybody. People do this to Sir Alex all the time. They do this. I saw a City fan do this. I'm not sure his name. Recently, he added the inflation to Fergie's spending, and it's like, okay, well, have you added inflation to Pep's? Why? Well, Pep's been in nearly a decade, and the money in football has risen in that time. We can't just apply inflation to what Man United spent in the 90s and not also add that to what all the other clubs spent in that time, because the £1 million that United spent in 1993 is the value of the teams that spent more than £1 million in 1993 that were our rivals. You've got to increase their expenditure too. You can't only put our money through expansion and inflation and leave everybody else's alone.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you've put a period of 14 years together where I don't know what the breakdown is, but if 30% of that was spent in the first 5 years, that valuation is worth nothing compared to what it would be in the last kind of 5 years of it, because of the way transfers were rising. Like, we go back to that decade when Forest sold Collingwood to Liverpool. That was a British record fee of $8.5 million.
Right.
That was in the mid-90s. That was like unheard of money. Then you've got what you were doing with Cantona and things like that. These are all, like, in perspective, in that time period you're given, the valuation of it is a lot different. You know, I remember when who was it? When Liverpool bought Carroll for 50 million or whatever it was.
35.
35. Yeah, eyes were raised and everything like that. So you got to look, 35 million now gets you a backup defender.
Yes,
but
it's
come on, you can't have that long time period. You got to break it down more than that.
Okay, well, let's break it down then. So let's go from give me some blocks of years, and I'll get you the figures right now.
I don't know. Like, when did I start watching football? 91 to 95.
So if we, I want to make sure this is all just, let me just do one thing very quickly because it's put all of them in there. Let's just do Premier League, right? So let's just do this as an experiment here. So Premier League income and expenditure. So from what year?
Say go 90 to 95.
So if we go from 1990 to 1995.
Well, that wouldn't even be the Premier League era, would it?
Yeah, well, yeah, but then I don't want to discount that because it's squad building, isn't it? And at the end of the day, you're spending towards it. So
don't forget, Fergie was one game away from being sacked.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. So, okay, from 1990 until 1995, Blackburn were the highest spenders, then Liverpool, then Everton, then Villa, then Tottenham, then Newcastle, then Leeds, then Sheffield United, then Arsenal. Man United were 10th in that period of time. Let's do it again now, and let's go from 1995-96 season to say 2001 at the end of that end of the three-peat and the treble winning period. So again, from that time, so from 1995 until 2001, Man United are 11th on that list. So again, we start breaking this down, and it's starting to look even better for Sir Alex Ferguson, because although he spent money, so in that time, Newcastle spent 178 million compared to Man United's 95 million. So in the period from the mid-90s until the end of our three-peat and treble winners, Newcastle spent the better part of £100 million more than us. Leeds, 157 million. Arsenal, 147 million. And that's the era where the Arsenal fans say we couldn't compete financially with Man United. They spent much more than us. Liverpool, 143. Chelsea, who everyone didn't think started spending until 2004, spent 137 million. Everton, 107 million. Blackburn, 105 million. Middlesbrough, 105 million. Aston Villa, 104 million. Spurs, 98 million. Man United in that time spent 95 million. In a period where we won 2 doubles, a treble and a three-peat, 10 clubs in the Prem spent more than we did. This is my point, and I'm not even blaming you, Wolfie. The mainstream media has indoctrinated football fans into believing that Man United just outspent everybody.
It was after like 2000, maybe like 2000. When did you guys sign Veron, if you don't mind me asking?
That was again. So we'll go to the next period. We signed him in like that was 03. So if we then go to the next period and go from 2001 until say 2000 and say a similar period 2006, because we're breaking it into like smaller periods. In that next period, we're definitely going to go up. So in that period, we were the second highest spenders in that time period. But again, the majority of that increase came from after reacting to what Chelsea were doing. Okay, so Chelsea in that time spent 477 million, Man United 283, Liverpool 200, Newcastle 160, Spurs 150 million. You then go to that next period after that, from 06 through until he retired in the 2012-13 season. We're definitely coming in at least third there. Then so again, you go to that next period. So we spent second most from 06 until he retired. Man City spent 725 million. Chelsea spent another 36. Liverpool spent 491. Spurs spent 448. Man United come in fifth in that period with 375. Sunderland spent 275. Arsenal 242. So even when you break it down into like periods of 5 to 6 years at a time, at no point were we the highest spenders. Second for a period of about 5 years, as we looked at, but then back down to fifth. Overall, Fergie, in his entire career at Man United, was only the fourth highest spending club in that time, but by far the most successful. And the two that outspent us in that time, when you actually go and look at it, because it's the same time period, so people can add inflation if they want. We can go right back to when he arrived until the day that he retired. He comes in fourth place with 793 million spent in that amount of time. Liverpool outspent us by 70 million and didn't win a single Premier League. They won league titles, of course, in the 80s, but no Premier Leagues. Man City spent 900 million, and you have to consider that a lot of that was in the last 4 or 5 years of Fergie, and Chelsea had spent 1.18 billion in that time. Spurs come in 0 league titles, 1 FA Cup, 1 League Cup in that time, spending 742 million, only 40 million to 40 million less than Manchester United did in that period. Again, this idea that Fergie just spent, it's a complete myth. And yes, he did break some transfer records. No one denies that. Why was he able to do it? Because he rebuilt the academy from scratch with Eric Steele in the 90s that produced some of the best talent in the world, so that we had more money to go out and go, right, I'm going to buy this absolute gem, rather than doing what Liverpool were doing in that time, which was always playing catch up because they were buying crap players, hiring bad managers. So Fergie shouldn't be penalized for doing a good job. So yeah, you can't
blame the media, Terry. I grew up in that era.
Can blame the media.
Man U, in my opinion, were high spenders, top or whatever. What you're doing, I mean, you were saying in there, Middlesbrough spent more than United did in a year. That was a year when they brought in the likes of Juninho, Ravanelli, Emerson, and those.
I think that's because I as well. I also lived through this, and I think what we're forgetting is, Man United spent big, but it was like a lot for one player, like Rio Ferdinand at like 30 million from Leeds. Like that was like groundbreaking. That's one player. Whereas we're talking like you said, Middlesbrough and Newcastle. When we spent big, it was on lots of players because, as Terry correctly pointed out, they had developed like the class of '92. When you've got a class of '92, and again, this is more credit to Fergie than it is to you were lucky. They developed the academy and they produced the class of 92, which covered right back for 20 years, left wing for 20 years. You had your centre midfield partnership for another 10, 12 years. You had Dennis Irwin played far longer than he probably should have at such a high level, who were brought in for tuppences, but in and around that same time. And David Beckham obviously is on the right wing or midfield, I guess, at the time. So when you've got a class of people essentially for free who are playing at that higher level for that amount of time, of course you can spend the same amount of, like Newcastle buying a whole team just to catch up. Because remember, we weren't even in the Premier League when it started. We had to get promoted up and catch up from there. Same with Man United from that point were essentially operating from a position of strength, always buying with using the money that they saved on academy talent to buy the best players from other teams to stay on top. That's just kind of what we've been brought up doing. Again, I guess it's just more praise to Ferguson rather than and like the general Man United as a club and institution rather than a detriment. But they're both, I mean, again, even in this conversation, it doesn't detract anything from Pep. I feel like they're both pioneers in their own sense.
I agree.
I think Ferguson, for me, is a pioneer in man management and sort of bringing in that philosophy, like the sort of...
Would you say pioneer?
Absolutely. In terms of like managing a club.
And well, isn't that man management? Because you could argue Brian Clough was doing what Fergie did.
But did he?
And
Daisy was also the same.
He did better
the
than
same amount of longevity as Ferguson did for as long as and through multiple periods against. Like, don't get me wrong, Cloughy is an absolute icon and a legend, but he's not Sir Alex Ferguson.
Did Fergie win the Champions League back to back?
You're right. He didn't win it back to back.
Did Fergie win the league?
Brian Clough win a treble? Did Brian Clough continue? No, he didn't. So I mean,
Brian Clough didn't win the league. Didn't retain a league title.
Like,
yeah, it was.
They retained a
Brian
Champions League,
Clough
though.
against the greatest Liverpool of all time.
Right. Okay. Well, man, Fergie won a three-peat against the greatest Chelsea team of all time. They spent more money than anyone in history. Like, I'm not like, again. I'm not playing down anything that Cloughy did. Cloughy was amazing.
It's the idea of pioneering. That's the one thing, because like there were managers beforehand that were.
So what Fergie did?
Okay, Fergie didn't pioneer, but he sort of took it to the next level. Pioneered sort of tacticians in the sense.
But then when you say Pep pioneered tacticians, again, I'm not disrespecting him. He himself has said, I just carried on the work of Cruyff and who came before him. The problem is in football is that everything is a stepping stone. Because one thing, people always talk about sports science and they give Wenger credit for it. Do you know who the manager was who brought sports science into the Premier League? 3 guesses, I bet no one gets it right.
Say again, sorry?
Kenny Dalglish.
The manager who brought sports science into the Premier League. No.
I just said Wenger, but...
No, yeah, but a lot of people say Wenger.
No, Souness tried to.
The man that pioneered it, who doesn't get the credit for it, because he's always the manager you throw in as a joke to other clubs if they're struggling.
Sam Allardyce.
Mark Hughes.
Sam Allardyce.
Oh, yeah.
When was this?
I don't remember the year. I remember him talking about it and Ferguson confirming it. Like, he used to get laughed at the LMA meetings. Like, why are you using all this weird sports science stuff? That was how he was able to get our Bolton team to do things that people didn't expect. Yeah, so there's loads of them. But look, I don't want to. I get your point. I want to do some of these super chats, and I'll move on to some of the other questions. Sorry, guys. Ironically, the Man United spend debate is just highlighting the fact that fans don't hate Chelsea and City enough. Blue stain on football. Draws in the Premier League. 19. We'll come back to this because we'll talk title race in a minute. Tell a club is not only spending on transfers, factor in salaries. When it comes to spending, all costs go on the Premier League, not just transfers. But this is also part of it. So people want to speak about that. So one of the reasons why Sir Alex pushed hard for the football club to expand the size of the stadium, they were worried because the stadium wasn't being filled in the late 80s and early 90s because they weren't winning. Even locals weren't going as regularly. But Sir Alex pushed the football club to grow the size of the stadium because his view was, and it was right, that essentially if we could get an extra 20,000 people in here every week compared to every other team in England, there's millions of pounds of revenue they don't have, meaning that when we have very good players, we can stop them from leaving because we can pay them the salary. So the problem that I have when people use it against him is that Sir Alex pushed for things and grew the club in a way that enabled us to, if we were successful, to keep hold of our successful teams. Equally, if Blackburn would have won the Premier League and retained it, gone on to do well in the Champions League, they wouldn't have lost their best players. They would have grown as a club, more fans, bigger stadium, and carried on going and going. City are going through that now. There's a reason that City have gone from turning over £200 million a year in revenue to nearly £1 billion because they've grown something that's successful. Chelsea's model, grown their income. Spurs have grown their income. Now, Spurs have done it without winning. Part of the new income is because of the popularity of the Premier League, as an example. So, yes, United, of course, paid big wages. But I bet if you go back and look, it wouldn't have been too dissimilar from other people. And yet, it isn't our fault that some teams fouled and then their better players wanted to leave, so therefore their wage bill dropped lower. It's a crazy one. I'd much rather have City's wage bill right now and their recent success than my current wage bill and no success. Trust me. This here says, a quote, a wise man once said, eras come to an end, they do. Wolfie, no Man United fan said it's not a red. We know we got away with one. So what's your deal? Also, you rival fans said nothing about Walker's stamp on Dorgu.
I've heard loads of Man U fans say it was a red. Not a red, sorry. So.
Ones with brains, though.
You kind of alluded to orange, I would say.
Well, I just alluded to the fact that they've not given many reds for this, and what I need to be is consistent. So when I do have an agenda against the PGMOL. One thing I've asked them to do is be consistent. So if, for instance, elbows to the face don't get red cards, and then they decide not to give a red card for another elbow in the face, as much as I disagree with the rule, I have to say, well, they're being consistent with their decision making. That's all I'm kind of alluding to on that. I disagree that Dorgu didn't work. If the ref did his job and the game would have been different from the 10-minute mark onwards. Revealed the ref went against the law on Ref Watch. We'll see. Yeah, they've said it. The PGMOL will come out and definitely say sorry. That being said, they definitely got our offside goal wrong. I don't understand how that was offside.
The one was not offside.
Yeah, you can tell by the framing.
The Mason Mount one was not offside.
I agree. They did it to spare his blushes. Moving on from that, because it took quite a bit of the show, but it was good to have the debate and conversation. Fact or fiction, Nobbins? I'm going to Nobbins first on this.
Oh my God.
Spending 60 million on Jermey Jaquet, I think that's how you pronounce it, is a waste of money from Chelsea. They need proven experience, not more young prospects.
It's a waste of money only if you think that Chelsea's ambition is to win the title, and everything points to that's not their ambition. So I'd say fiction, because I don't think that Chelsea's ownership wants to win the Premier League. I don't think they really care about it. If you did, you wouldn't spend all that money on Jacquet. Sorry, I don't know how you pronounce it. Jacquet, whatever. Pardon?
Jacquet.
Jacquet, thank you. You'd buy Gahey. As an example, you would buy a centre-back who's got far more experience and immediately elevates the starting 11, can play both right and left centre-back as Gahey can do. I don't get what Chelsea are. I can only conclude that they're not a side that really cares about winning the Premier League, because if you were, you wouldn't have this transfer policy. I can't even remember the Chelsea fan, but there was one on, it's been a while since I've been on the terrace because I've been so busy, but whoever the Chelsea fan was on last time I was here, and he said, I don't care if we don't win the Premier League again. And that took me back a little bit, but it's almost like that mentality sort of, and perhaps that's an outlier, but it's almost like the mentality is we want to praise. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It's just a thing though. It's fine to praise economics, and it's fine to praise we got X amount of money and our net spends lovely. That's fine. It's not why I consume football personally, but it seems to be that's what Chelsea wants to do, and they won't win the Premier League with this policy of just not doing what needs to be done. The squad, everyone can see that they need senior, excellent centre-back options. You won't win the Premier League with Fofana and Tosin and Badiashile and who else are their centre-backs? Jacquet now. Yeah, you will not win the. Yeah, you will not win the Premier League with those centre-backs quite clearly. So I think fiction.
So on that food for thought for the rest of the panel, the total cost of this deal for Jacquet will be about the same for Chelsea as Gahey. Gahey a smaller fee, but of course a much bigger salary, around 300,000 plus bonuses, which is normal because it's why net spend ain't real, but normal considering he was going to be a free transfer soon. Where this deal,
yes,
yeah, where this deal is going to be more expensive in terms of the fee at 60 million, around 75k a week they reckon, but over the same contract time, you're looking at both costing around 85 to 90 million. So City going for experience, Chelsea here going for kids. What are you saying, Wolfie? Is this the right approach from Chelsea, or do you agree with what Nobbins is saying here, that it is the right approach because they're just hoarding players rather than trying to win the league?
I fully agree with Nobbins. I think Chelsea should change their name from Chelsea FC to Chelsea Ltd, because they're trying to turn it into a business. Like, it's losing it. They've lost their soul at that club. They really have. When you see fan bases celebrating net profit in the summer rather than, talking about how they're going to build a team and can they make a title charge and what have you, it's quite frankly, it hurts to see, because you want football to be about the football, not about all these silly deals. I was just looking now, Chelsea have already spent another 60, 70, 75 million euros on players to come in that are loaned out for next year, on players I've never heard of. Some left back called Denner. They've got Quenda for 50 million euros. Sat Piev for another 3 million euros. That's total 70 million euros spent on players that I'm sure most of us have never heard of. And Chelsea is not a hard fix. They need 2 centre-backs, they need a better goalkeeper, and they need a gunman up front. That probably cost them 200 to 300 million to fix. Even if you say 400 million, it's a drop in the ocean to what they have been spending. I don't understand why they can't do that. I don't understand why they got this silly rule of, you know, the age restriction of 24 or 25, whatever they've set as their limit out to be. Go and win stuff now. Spend the money now. That money then turns into more money with the success you have. You have a more global audience interested in you. Chelsea become relevant to the topic of the conversation for positive rather than for us bantering what they're doing as a club. And this model will not work. It will not work. So I think, again, this summer, the Chelsea fans will be celebrating selling some kids or something to Arsenal for some profit again. And Arsenal will be the ones with the silverware and Chelsea will be the ones talking to their bank managers. So this model needs to change, and it needs to change quickly because it's not good for football.
I'm actually going to do the unthinkable. I'm actually going to defend Chelsea a little bit because I think Jacquet is a very talented footballer. I think I've seen bits and parts of him this season, and I think he's fantastic. I think he's got.
Is he what they need, though, Ram? That's the question, isn't it? Is he what they need? They've got lots of talented, lovely players.
I had to think about this, right? And I think they need a lot. I think they need a lot. However, the kind of player that he is, I think he fits the model perfectly. I think he's a brilliant centre-back. I think he's a great tackler, very good on the ball. I think he has the makings to be an all-round great defender. But when it comes back to the argument, and I'm going to stick with this because I strongly believe in it, you need experience in your team. The only way you can win a league title or win the top-level trophies with a team of youngsters if you have a generational manager. And unfortunately, there are no generational managers out there that can do that at this moment in time that are available. I don't think Luis Enrique will move to that kind of project. I don't think there's anyone out there that will be more than happy to do it. So I think in terms of the actual quality of the player, I think he's a fantastic player. I think if Chelsea were going to go out and sign him, I think they should be very excited about it. However, then you have to talk about the expectations of Chelsea, which is, are they going to go out and win a league title? That's a different story, in my opinion, because you need experience, especially when you're up against teams like Arsenal who have experience around the pitch. If you come up against teams like Liverpool and City who have experience all across the pitch, you need to have some form of experience. If you don't have a generational manager, so that's sort of my thought process behind it. I think you guys are being a bit disrespectful in Jacquet.
How's that helping? For me, since they lost Silva at the back, they haven't had leadership at the back. This kid's, 19, 20 years old. You have to always have that voice of authority in the back line. Chelsea don't have that. You could say Reece James, but I'm talking, he's been playing in midfield at times now.
Yeah.
You have to have that experience, that footballing brain that's been there and seen it and done it. This is just like, he may be a good player, but he's not what they need. They need experience. They need people with calm heads. That's what they need. This may be another nice signing that sells some shirts and everything. But if Chelsea is serious about mounting a title challenge, are you going to rely on a 20-year-old that's coming from the French league?
I 100% agree with what you say, 100%. Because when I look at that kind of thing, I'm looking at 70 million. When I heard 70 million euros, I was like, Jesus, I was not thinking about spending that kind of money on him. I would rather spend that money on a proven centre back, i.e., like a Schlotterbeck.
You could probably get Murillo,
like a Schlotterbeck or something like not even Murillo. Murillo's a fantastic player. Schlotterbeck around about 50 million, and the 20 million you could put on wages. Those are the kind of players that you expect to sign. But I think in terms of the actual quality of the player, I think he's a fantastic player. But Chelsea, if you want to talk about winning the major honors, i.e., winning the Premier League and possibly even having a good chance of winning the Champions League as well, you've got to sign the top players, in my opinion. And experience is needed. How many times have we said, like, people talk about the class of '92, how great they were, but how many times have United fans talked about the likes of Pallister, the likes of, I don't know if Bruce was still there, Cantona, who was there beforehand, like. Those are the kind of players that you need. You can't win. You can't, like, even if you look at Borussia Dortmund's team, they had obviously Klopp at the helm, but they had people like Sebastian Kehl and Weidenfeller who were already German internationals then. Like, you can't do it. You can't win a league title without having some form of experience in your team that have been through the tough games from top to bottom.
What are you saying, Kane?
Nothing that hasn't already been said. I think we've I guess the one thing that I would push back a little bit is the idea that Chelsea could get Guéhi. I don't think where they are in this current day and age. I don't think, unless you could sell the London aspect to him and that side of things, I don't think he was going to choose Chelsea over Man City.
Oh, sorry, I meant like a Guéhi. It doesn't have to be him, but you know what
I assume that's what you meant, which is why I wouldn't really. I wasn't really going to jump in on that, but yeah, I kind of agree with what everyone said. To be honest, I haven't really watched much of him. I've not watched any of him, so I can't really speak to his talent levels and all that. He may turn out to be really good, and we'll all sit here looking like idiots. He may not, and we all might be proven right, and they flip him and sell him on. I think it's the low wage. For me, I think it's the wage structure at Chelsea that may not have to change, depending on, as Nobbins said, whatever the board at Chelsea are after. If it is just Champions League and we're good, then listen, the wage structure is probably about right, and Jacquet fits straight into it, and a Guéhi wouldn't, whereas or like a Schlotterbeck wouldn't. But if they are serious and actually want to challenge, then yeah, I think it's the wages that have to change rather than who and how much.
See, for me, this is a player you would bring in behind your established pairing. Like, if you look at what Arsenal have done,
like what Liverpool
they've got their established pairing of Gabriel and Saliba, and then they've brought in Cappy and they've brought Mascara in. You kind of saw it with Liverpool a little bit. I know he's been injured, but Leone, for example, coming in, you almost need that conveyor belt, so you're planning ahead. What Chelsea are doing are filling the conveyor belt up with nothing in front of it. And that's the problem, because Colwell's probably their best centre-back for me, but he's injured. Fofana never seems to stay fit. They're not established in their own right. Their model is wrong. You have to have those experienced players first. If he was brought in...
I think they've overestimated how good Trevor Chalobah and... I think they've overestimated how good Tosin and Chalobah are.
Well, no, but no, they haven't. No, they haven't. Sorry. But the other report is that those guys are on the chopping block this summer. So it looks like the experienced guys are going to go.
I meant in terms of like when they brought him in, they overestimated what they would be. I assume
but they tried to get rid of Chalobah at the start.
And your Chalobah and your Tosins were brought in to be like those locker. I don't want to say use American terms, but like locker room leaders, or like you sort of your managers within the team kind of thing.
The experience.
Like that's what you could call it experience, but as well, sure. But that's what they were probably brought in to do. And I think they've been, as well as being that sort of first name on the team sheet, and they just haven't been up to the standard that Chelsea have needed. And to go and find that is going to cost them a lot of money. And I just don't think they're willing to do that for the reasons you've all already said, really.
Yeah, viewers, give us your views, give us your opinions on Chelsea's new centre back that looks fairly, it feels and looks fairly imminent, to be fair to this.
Look, they've got themselves a great centre back. I think he's going to be a top centre back in years to come. I think he's got everything. He's got everything you want in a centre back.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Next question: fact or fiction, Wolfie? Arsenal winning the Premier League would be proof that the overall standard of the league has fallen.
Fiction. Complete fiction. The standard of the Premier League has fallen despite or in spite of Arsenal winning the league. It is so bad compared to, even if you went back 5 years, 6 years, I'd go back longer. Some of these players that we're calling world class and world beaters don't lace up some players from the mid to late 90s, early 2000s at all. Some will say, oh, it's the old man talking in my day and what have you. But I'm sorry, the quality of strikers alone, I could reel you off 10 strikers from that time period that walk into everyone's team in the Premier League. And there's only a couple of strikers in the league that would walk into any of those teams from back then. So I think the quality of the striking is rubbish. I think the quality of the tactics is where we're really failing here. What I tend to feel that games are predetermined before the matches started. And what I mean by that is, if you take the Forest-Arsenal game, for example, Forest wanted to get 1 point. That's what they were playing for. Forest had no intention of caring about getting 3 points. 1 point was a win, hence why I've been shameless about it. So that automatically dictates the setup of the game, that we've come out and Sean Dyche has decided that Forest are, and I'm just using Forest as the example, you can insert any team name in there. We are the inferior team on quality on the pitch, therefore we will just put 11 men behind the ball and Arsenal try and break us down. And that makes for a terrible, terrible football match to watch. And I think that was fine. Even back in the day, you would have seen that when Man U were at their peak and they were playing a lower opposition, that would happen. But where it started to bleed into for me is the mid-level teams where, oh, we've got a couple of injuries or we're away from home, therefore we need to be tight and make sure we defend. And it's becoming over-defensive. And therefore you're not seeing free-flowing football where one side's attacking the other and vice versa. And just in general, I think the biggest thing is what I said there, that we are overhyping average players into superstars. And a lot of it comes from the way they're brought up into football. Again, if you go back in my day, players would come in and they were the boot boys. They would collect the boots, they would clean them. If you speak to any of the older players, they say that was the rite of passage. You get the boots, you clean them, you work your way in and around the team, you get to feel it. Now, could you imagine this kid going to Chelsea? Do you think he's going to be doing any of the hard yards or the ugly stuff that they were doing there? It's the rite of passage. Players think they've already made it before they've proven themselves on the pitch. And the standard, to go back to the question, it doesn't matter if Arsenal win or lose this title. It's got nothing to do with Arsenal. The Premier League has slowed down. This whole fastest league in the world, most physical league in the world. I'm sorry, I see most of these Premier League games played at walking pace. There's hardly any energy in them. Best game I've seen in recent times was Leeds against Newcastle the other week. I enjoyed watching that game. That was a proper football match. You know what I mean? Outside of that, they're very, very dull to watch. They really are.
What do you guys feel? Because I hear Wolfie's point of view and perspective. I feel like a lot of people are sort of planting this. I've seen a lot of Liverpool fans today on their TikTok accounts. I've seen them on Sky doing this. I mean, a year ago, the league was tip-top, peak quality. City fans, similar. Like in the last 5 to 10 years, this is the best era of the Premier League ever. Suddenly, Arsenal top, looking like they might win, and suddenly the standards fallen off. Wolfie, in fairness, has been someone saying this for a long time, so it isn't specific to Arsenal. But I feel that a lot of City fans, a lot of Liverpool fans in the last month to 6 weeks are now pushing this narrative that the overall quality of football is bad, so winning the Premier League is therefore almost a bit pointless. What do you go on?
I think that, well, there's going to be some sour grapes, obviously, like my team's not doing good, therefore the league's washed. But there's always going to be some stuff like that. I do think there is some truth to be had about it, though. So I don't know if you want to talk about objective quality, because I don't really know what that means, because one person's boring game is another one's like tactical mastermind of a game. So
yeah,
I would actually argue that the league as a unit, the floor of it has increased substantially over the past few years. By that, I mean, there was that graph that went around, wasn't there, where, you know, every team's beaten everyone, something like that. You can make like a circle of teams that are beating one another. So the ceiling has gotten better. So the worst teams are better. This is why you see less batterings and all that stuff. But which in theory is good. But with that, you get the trade-off of, well, everyone's more evenly matched. Therefore, you get less fun attacking football. And it is objective to say that there has been this season, I don't know if obsession is the correct term, but there has been a desire for set piece optimization, definitely. I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it is a thing. And this is a season where we've seen more set piece goals scored than in like recent memory. if you assume that City, let's just take the title race level for a second. If you assume that City and Arsenal are going to continue to score goals at the same rate as they have been doing, then that means that City will end the season with 78 goals and Arsenal will end it with 69 goals. The last time it was that low at the title race level was 2016, and that was when Leicester won the title. So there's no doubt that goals generally have been at a premium, certainly at the title race level this season. I don't know what it's like replicated across the rest of the season. So I think that you could argue that the teams have gotten better, but therefore that's the product has suffered as a consequence, as an entertainment package. It suffered as a consequence. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, that's something to argue about.
It reminds me of why there's foxes in our towns, because rabbits were causing problems for farmers. And this story's longer than I'm going to make it, but I think it was myxomatosis is the name of the disease that was either man crafted or man replicated. They put it out into the wild to try and get rid of some of the rabbits because it was causing farmers problems. Men get involved and then it killed off all the rabbits and there was no natural food for the foxes. So they started pestering us in our towns. By the time they fixed the rabbit problem, a lot of the foxes went, well, fuck off. We're not going to hunt. We can just go in someone's bin. And the reason I always use that as an example is for years, people didn't want the top four. They didn't want this like gap between the best 3 or 4 teams, a few others, and then the crap stuff. They wanted it to be more evenly matched. I agree with you, Nobbins. I think it is harder now than I've seen it in a long time, in the sense of it reminds me a bit of the 90s. It reminds me more of the noughties, where every now and then you got an absolute dirt team like that Derby side. But I look at that Wolves this season. They're not as bad as that Derby side were. They wouldn't have got relegated back then. They can actually give teams really good games. They just haven't won as many games as they've been in. And I feel that there's this element of, if people talk about spending caps and wage caps. If you do that, that's how football's going to be. There's a reason that English football as a league soared past all the other leagues over a 15-year period. It's because we saw the emergence of the original top 4. English football prior to that, when we saw it, I know Liverpool had that periods where they were dominated, but a team could be 8th one season, win it the next year, come 15th the following year. English football wasn't, we enjoyed football, of course we did as a country, but so there's part of me that sort of thinks we've kind of got what anybody outside the top 4 was asking for, more parity, more jeopardy, more evenly balanced, but it now feels that people aren't enjoying the games as much because your Man United, your Chelseas, your Arsenals and Liverpools aren't by far the best teams, with a couple of bad results. I find it an interesting one, but I'm quite enjoying it. I like the fact that every weekend it's fucking hard to call who's going to win the games. I quite like yesterday's Newcastle Wolves game. I didn't think it was a bad game of football. I actually enjoyed no one scored, which was shit, but I enjoyed watching the battle between the two teams. I enjoyed it personally, but I might be a bit weird. I don't know.
I still strongly believe that. I don't personally believe that the so-called floor has gotten better. I still think, even if you look back 5 or 6 years ago, there's always been teams that would cause trouble. Even the smaller teams, if you could argue, like Wolverhampton Wanderers back in the day, when they had Ruben Neves, Diogo Jota, God rest his soul, and Raul Jimenez, they were a problem. Leicester City under Brendan Rodgers with the likes of Maddison and Vardy, they were always a problem. I think for me, I've always maintained that the ceiling of the league has dropped quite a bit compared to what it was 5 or 6 seasons, because not because of how poor everything is, because back then, 5, 6 years ago, we had 2 generational managers and 2 next levels of squad building. Like the squad building between those 2 was just at the elite level, where majority of the signings that we made weren't flops. They were incredible signings at the time.
Let me interject for a second. I'm going to ask you a question. Would those Liverpool and City teams have got 95 to 100 points every season if Palace, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Brighton, Nottingham Forest were as good as they are now? In terms of, I look at this like the mid group of teams, and I mean size of clubs, how hard they all are to beat away from home. Aston Villa, if they were at that standard, the Man United, Chelsea, we always know they've always been capable of taking points off you guys, and did take points off you guys in those seasons. But do you feel that though it would have been possible to have got that level of points even with those? Because again, Pep's still here. Yeah, Pep's still here, right? And he ain't able to do it. And I feel the last 2 years, There just seems to be. I mean, look at Sunderland coming up this year. They're on par with nearly every Premier League team when they play them. Like, I feel like there's more. I think it's harder to win games in the Premier League now than it was.
I think those two teams could still do what they did, in my opinion, because you talk about Sunderland, 1920, Sheffield United were doing what Sunderland were doing. But like, for instance, when we played against Sheffield United, we had to rely on a Dean Henderson mistake to win that game. Like, it was probably one of our most toughest fixtures that we played that season, and we were almost flawless that season. Like, I feel as though with all these teams, if you look back, you could argue that some teams were doing what these teams are doing right now. And I'm not it's not a disrespect, because I think the level of football in the Premier League has gotten to another level compared to what it was, because I think you had the odd team here and there back in the mid-2000s that would challenge for the top 4 places.
I want to give you an example. Chelsea came 4th that year, okay, and lost 12 games in the league.
Yeah.
Again, for me, as good as this year, we could get close to that again this year. But this year, you've got City in second who have lost 5, Villa have lost 5, Liverpool have lost 5. I actually can't quite believe them. Man United have only lost 5 games this year. I don't know why I thought it was more than 5 games, but only lost 5 games. I feel like you go right down now to, like, yes, you might see the loss column there, but I feel like barring Arsenal this season, there is much. It just feel like everybody's a lot closer. And I know City aren't as good as what they were. That is fair. But I just look at I lived those games. I covered a lot of those games. I don't know. I just feel like it's got. Wolfie, you said something in the middle of that. What did you say? I didn't quite hear you.
Which bit?
When Ram was talking about, like, the Forest of this world being like this group of teams now, like the medium-sized clubs seem to be at a higher level now than they were maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
It's hard to judge, because since Forest, Bournemouth, and Fulham came up, since then, all the teams that came up have been shit. This is the first season we've seen some competitive teams coming up, which has shaken up the bottom, which, by the way, sort Spurs and Man U out from last year. You're lucky. But that's put that midfield pack together. But it doesn't necessarily, that midfield pack can be together here at this level or at this level. I just still feel it's at this level. I don't think they're as good as some certain teams think. Like, it's relative to what you're currently playing against. And I don't think the quality is as good, mate. I really don't. I do agree with what Ram said, that the top level has dropped a bit, because honestly, this whole scary Arsenal thing, every thumbnail I see is Arsenal so scary. I wasn't scared on Saturday. There was nothing really from them to show me that they were good at breaking a low block team or anything like that in that kind of instance of that game. And I just think that the Centurion team or that Liverpool team would have destroyed Forest at Saturday. And that's the difference for me. That's the difference. Yes, that midfield has closed up. I think the first, second, third spots have come back down towards them more so than the other way around.
I think I just want to say nostalgia sometimes plays a part in that, though. I mean, that it does, because that Invincible team drew 12 games.
12 games, yeah.
So they clearly didn't break down and win against all the teams, because every team sat back low block against Arsenal. Even the big teams used to do back then. And I think that's one thing we all get kind of suckered into, is what I found with this season, maybe more so than any other I've watched in a while. And I think Nobbins pointed out, it just feels like every team is capable of beating any team, which I've always felt like most seasons, if you go back and remember it, try and be objective, there was always like 5 or 6 games for the top teams that you just knew were going to be wins. And every now and then there was an anomaly, where I sort of feel now that when you go away to Forest, Bournemouth, Palace, Newcastle, Villa, City, Arsenal, Liverpool, even though some of these guys ain't having good seasons by their own standards, none of us go to those grounds anymore going, I think that's an absolute gimme. There's very few games where you go, that's going to be a win. Yeah, if we're playing an average European side in Europe, any of us, we will go, got to be a win, because we actually feel superior in that way. And 9 times out of 10, our big teams are doing that, if that makes sense. And it's just it's an interesting one for me. Go on, mate. Sorry, go on, Ram.
I was going to say, it's relative, because I think I'm going to be quite shameless in the sense of, I think I think the boys from Coppish speak for a lot of Liverpool fans. And before they did those games, they would say that going to Selhurst Park is incredibly difficult. Going to Molineux was difficult. Going to the likes of West Ham, going to London Stadium.
So West Ham had a run for a bit, but that's subjective because Palace away was like a really hard game for you. But up until the last couple of years, Man United won there all the time as an example, right? So Wolves, by the way, since Nuno got them promoted, even through to now, Man United struggle against them. But every team might have a side. No matter how bad Spurs are, they always seem to beat Man City. So I think there's teams that just kind of have your number, as it were.
But then Burnley at the time would take points from the top teams because of the style of football they played. I still remember the two brothers of destruction.
But did I get you? But did they do that like for a couple of seasons running? Because even though this year I know Forest are down, I see Forest at 17th, right? Maybe gone to 16th now. I don't know. I didn't check the league. I don't think you're as bad as the league position suggests in all your games. I really don't. Where teams that were right down there in years gone by weren't very good teams. I can't agree more with Nobbins. I think I think the floor's gone up where maybe the ceiling has come down a bit, but that's also natural because clubs have got more money. They're not forced into selling their better players. But even when they do, the conveyor belt now, because the money they have, like Brentford are being able to recover from selling their best players better than teams 20 years ago were able to recover from selling their best players because there's so much money here now. I think if you look at the income we give all our clubs from the TV money, it makes our smallest clubs in the Prem richer than most other European clubs almost instantly.
Forest have the 13th most expensive squad in Europe. Like, make that make sense.
But for me, that's
the money that's in football. It is crazy. And I just think the other thing that's played into this, boys, is all these fucking stats, man. Like, Terry Kane, when we were growing up, you ever heard of XG or field tilt or momentum?
No.
It was all eye test. You kind of felt the game. It was more a feel.
It was there, but without the word XG attached to it. I think you could say like, "Oh, we were really good. We made lots of chances." No one really applied the
language. The language has changed because, like, it's a people use the word scanning now. We just used to call it good awareness, but with scanning, I suppose that they're able to quantify XG. Is something I hated when it came out, but the more I've learned about it, the more important I actually think it is, because
that's become the center of the world when it's talking about football or passes completed.
But even then, where I agree with you is you could have 3 XG, but it might just be that you had 25 shots from range and they all went straight into the goalkeeper's arm. That's where the eye test has got to come in, but you mix that in with big chances. But what I like about XG is basically what it shows you is shots from that angle or from that distance. This is the percentage that go in. And for me, I think it's a really important thing to learn, because sometimes there's been chances where I've gone, oh, that's a sitter. And then you see the XG, like, you're telling me only 9% of people score from there. But yet you'll see like a Harry Kane who always finishes it from there. You're like, that shows the quality of a Kane or a Haaland because they're always scoring those chances.
Yeah, but XG doesn't take into account that, does it?
But exactly,
that's the point.
But that's the point. That's the point.
So the point is an average.
So the point is that on average, when shots from that part of the pitch are taken, on average, say 8% of people score. But if you've got a striker who's scoring 45% from there, it proves how good a finisher they are because they're performing above the average person shooting from that range. I think it's a very good indicator for how efficient a striker you've got if you're able to score more goals from the positions that most people struggle from. And what we used to call them is half chances. Those strikers that kind of score from the acute angle or they shoot a little bit earlier. And Harry Kane is a great example because the amount of times we all suffered at the hands of him, he'd be at a really tight angle. You go, oh, he's not going to do much. He'd turn, get half a yard and shoot and put it in the bottom corner. The fact is, the reason that most strikers aren't doing what he does is because they don't have the shooting accuracy from them angles to score that many goals.
Yeah, look, I'm not saying XG shouldn't be in the game. What I'm saying is that when did you ever, after a game, go sit down with your mates in the pub or whatever and say, "Oh, what did you think of Chris Wood's XG today or something?" It's all you talk about.
Respectfully, no one's doing that in
miss this and what
2026, and I'm a big data person, but I've never done that once with anyone who I know.
I know, but I'm saying this is all the discussions. I'll use it
because it's interesting. That's why.
XG was 0.07. I'm throwing that in their face.
I think it's the wording behind it because I'll use an example. Like you could say, for instance, back in the day, Fernando Torres. Like, what do you think of the amount of chances that he scored or he missed, like the gilt-edged opportunities? People just use XG now because that is another way of saying he had these chances and he didn't convert any of them.
I agree, and I don't disagree with everything you're saying, Wolfie. I think there's a time and a place for it, and what I find is there's a lack of understanding. A lot of people lack the understanding of it, but equally others will overuse it as well. And I think there's a combination of it. I think they can both sit alongside. Alongside each other in the game, and I think that's an important element. I want to do a few super chats here because I don't want to miss them before the end of the show. Sorry about that, gents. Just bear with me. Sorry, I'm just texting someone. There we go. Not the level of player skill, but the level of data-based tactics making the league unpredictable, low XG goals, and
there's that word.
Grindy defending, gritty defending. Yeah.
Wolfie's gone Kill Bill on it.
It's language, isn't it? Because it's just what we used to call it was like a half chance. You're not scoring those half chances, as it were. If the ceiling of the league would have fallen, it would show in Europe. Every team has developed a structure to cutting passing lanes up high. Now a new era of attackers would develop accordingly.
You say this. Who were the teams that played in the Champions League final, Europa League final back in the day in 1819? It was an all English affair.
Yeah,
Newcastle went in it, so I wouldn't know.
Do you think this is literally just popped into my head now? Do you think it could help football if there was teams would probably cheat, to be fair, but if there was like a limitation put onto clubs of how much data they could have on an opponent, so there's only a limited amount of scouting you could do on an opponent, just like I just ran it out there. Like if you didn't get the chance to, when you play Sunday League football, you sort of just turned up and played, and it was how it was. Yeah. Like, could you add a bit of that? Because I think that's one thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing for the game, but the amount of studying you can do on another team also sometimes makes it harder to score goals and win games.
They should reveal your opponent like an hour before kickoff. It's like, right. And if you're not near Newcastle and you're in Southampton, then you shout out a look. That would make it well entertaining.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Look at the bus now. Defensive organisation improve within the league. Can someone here point out the improvement in new attacking techniques and patterns used in the last 5 years? Oh, Nobbins might be good at this. No, this is Nobbins' field.
The defensive organisation has definitely improved. There is this growing burden on and desire to be solid out of possession. There is this obsession with it. What was the second bit? Concerning point. I think part of the reason for that is because in my opinion, it's easier to be better defensively than it is better to be good at attacking. I think like defense is easier to coach, whereas attacking is harder. Like lots of the top managers have even said, I don't really coach like the final third. I just let the players do it. Whereas you can obviously coach the defense a bit easier.
You could argue dead balls and corners and things.
Yeah, again, Nobbins.
Yeah.
You can say that, but I'd love to hear the stats when it comes to like Brighton back in the day when they had Lewis Dunk as their main point of the main centre back, because they were all about organisation. Keep making sure that you keep it nice and resolute. And if we had an opportunity to take him on the break, usually Solly March is the main guy to lead the counter attack. So
I just think things go in cycles as well, though. There'll be
football is cyclical.
Yeah.
I think just the middle level teams, they just stay the same. They're just really, really tough opponents.
I think one of the big things, it's nothing to do with tactics. It's teams aren't being forced into selling as many of their players. The Premier League teams are richer, so they can backfill a lot quicker and easier. Look at the Forest team from last year. Some really good players that you can just not keep. If the Premier League didn't have the money it had now, forget the owners because of PSR. So many of your players your centre backs would have gone. Gibbs White definitely would have gone. There'd have been so much upheaval because of that.
They tried to get.
Sorry, yeah, it's true. Arteta was ahead of the curve. The league is now big emphasis on
Out of possession.
Out of possession structure. Pep is struggling to adapt, and the level of defending is the highest it's been.
Wish Jurgen was still here, man.
It's that system benefits defense versus individual brilliance for striking. If the Premier League is worse off, then why are English teams now better in Europe? The question, the only devil's advocate is maybe football as a overall sport has kind of got worse, and there is precedence for that. Yeah, boxing's a little hard to work it out, but there was a good 10-year period where the overall state of heavyweight boxing was very, very low, and then it improved again. Wolfie waffling, free flowing means crap standards, is what AMT says here. My personal XG with getting laid at home is 0.00. Yeah, exactly. But if that's a general rate of performance, but Nobbins turns up and gets 100% straight away, then it's you, bruv. It's you. Do you know what I mean?
Quite a high XG.
Hi, Terry. Hope you're well. Mark said you might know the mystery midfielder's name. No pressure to share. But do you think he'll be good and help us improve? I think he'll do us well. I do know exactly who the secret midfielder of Man United is. We'll talk about it with me and Mark tomorrow morning on the Football Terrace. The quality of the defensive part has improved substantially, but the attack has stagnated. I think there's a combination. Pep is the board checkbook fraud. There we go. Look, guys, I want to thank you all so much for coming on the show tonight. It means a great deal to us here. This is going to redirect you to Footy Judge Mo's channel, so go and support him. Nobbins, Wolfie, Ram, Kane, thank you all for coming on. Great discussions as ever. Until next time, people, take care. Goodbye. God bless. And remember, it's Carrick, you know.